Hello everybody and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And if you have already guessed by the title of this video, today we're going to be talking about Procreate. For those of you who are new here, my name is Laura and I am the illustrator and creator behind Laura Jane Illustrations on Instagram, where I aim to create and share content that helps you feel good about you. One of the most asked questions that I get again and again and again, people even email me to ask me this question, is what do I use to create my content on Instagram? Now, while I do use some other apps like Lightroom and Premiere Pro to edit reels or photographs, pretty much everything that I post on Instagram goes through Procreate at some point. It's just got a really simple layout. It isn't too fussy. You're not bombarded with like tools and information all of the time. But in the simplicity that's there, there's also such a huge range of what you can do with it. Everything can be personalized and tweaked to fit your needs. Today I'm going to talk you through some of the basics of the app in terms of finding your way around Procreate when you first download it. If you already use Procreate, this might not be the video for you, but if you're interested in downloading Procreate, I hope that this video is going to help you navigate the app a little bit better. So without further waffling, let's dive into Procreate. So the first thing that you're going to see when you open up your Procreate app is your gallery. I've seen people lay out their gallery where it's just literally filled with posts, and so the first thing that I want to point out is the ability to create a stack. Creating a stack bunches together canvases of like similar things, so it's kind of like creating a folder on a desktop. You can organize your canvases and your creations together based on what they're for. So in my gallery, as you can see, I have a stack for Instagram posts for Laura Jane Illustrations. So the next thing that you need to think about when you're using Procreate is a canvas, because that's how you start something. To create a new canvas, you click on the plus in the top right-hand corner of the gallery, and this will give you a selection of the canvases that you can choose from. Again, if you've just downloaded Procreate, there will be some canvases in there for you already pre-created. However, I highly recommend that you set up your own canvases before you start creating things, because then this avoids you creating something on a canvas that maybe has a small size and low resolution. Then you can also choose your color palette, which is great when you're thinking about printing, or if you're creating something that specifically needs to be printed, you can choose if you want it to be RGB canvas or if it's a CYMK canvas. And this makes sure that when you're creating and illustrating it, that the colors, when you print them, will come out as you saw them, rather than creating it in the wrong setting and then it transferring over and those colors not coming out the way you want them to. So these are all things to consider when you're first setting up your canvases. Think about the kind of content that you're going to be creating, and have those canvases preloaded and pre-named so that when you want to create something, it's really easy to click. Okay, let's move on. Once you've gone ahead and selected your canvas, it's going to open up into the canvas view, and that is where you do all of your creating. So I'm going to walk you through the layout in here and the different settings or the different tools that are available for you. I'm not going to go into specific detail for anything today. The aim of this video is just really for you to get a feel for where everything is in the app. So starting at the left-hand side and working our way across, the first little symbol that we see beside the word gallery, which by the way is your shortcut back to your gallery when you want to finish working on something. The first little tool that we see is like the little wrench, and this is your settings menu. When you tap on that, you have your settings for copying and pasting things. This is where you will export your work when it's finished, and you can choose what format you want to export it in. It's also where you have your canvas settings, where you can turn things like your grids on and off, or if you want to switch and make this an animation. It's also where you can find your time-lapse replay if you want to export just a time-lapse of your canvas as you create it. And it's also where you can set your preferences. One of the things that I would recommend if you're just new to installing Procreate or you really haven't had a proper explore, it's a really good idea to go through each individual thing that's in that settings menu so you understand what it is and what it does and you know where it is when you actually need it. So make sure that you do that. And definitely go through the preferences and set them up the way that you want them. And also you can come back and change them whenever you want, but just know where everything is before you start creating. Okay, moving on from settings, the next little icon we see is the adjustments menu. The adjustments menu has been updated a lot since I first started using Procreate, and now you can find things in here like saturation and brightness control, which means that you can actually edit photos directly inside in Procreate. You can also find some really cool adjustment settings in here like glitch, where you can make your illustrations like pixelate. There's also the gradient tool, which is really great for recoloring things. There's also some blur settings, which come in really handy when you're shading or if you want to create some like nice blurred rainbow backgrounds. So again, have a play around with some of these settings, maybe like import a photo onto your canvas or import an old piece of work that you've done and just see what happens when you play with the different things in this menu. The next tool that we have, continuing moving left to right, is the selection tool. This is kind of like the equivalent of the magic wand tool if you've used Photoshop or Illustrator. And there's different settings in it, so you can choose automatic and tap on a specific color and it will select everything of the same color, or you can use freehand to kind of draw around something that you want to either remove or move. I use this mostly for like selecting little details and tweaking the position of where I have them on a canvas. Or it's also great if you want to remove maybe like the background from a photograph, or if you're illustrating on top of a photograph and you want to cut away pieces of the illustration so it appears that they go behind the person in your photograph. Right beside the selection tool is the symbol that's like a little mouse cursor, and this is your move tool. So if you click on this, it will select everything in the layer that you're currently on and allow you the option to move, resize, or warp it. Another way that you can use the move tool is by combining it with your selection tool. So once you've selected a portion of your canvas, you can click directly onto the move tool and then it will allow you to specifically move that part of the layer which you selected using your selection tools. So on the right hand side of our editing space are 4 more icons. We have our brushes menu, our smudge selection, our smudge tool rather, we have our eraser, and we have our layers menu, and then the little circle is where you have your colors. So I mean, those are pretty straightforward in terms of what they are and what they do, and as I already said, I'm not going to go into much detail on them today because I do want to do specific videos where I have a closer look at each of them individually and give you tips on them. But basically, when you click on brushes, you can choose brushes from the menu and get different textures and different finishes. The smudge tool does exactly as it says on the tin. It smudges things. If you tap it twice, you get your brush menu, so you can actually choose a specific brush for smudging with. And the same with the eraser. When you tap on your eraser twice, it gives you your brush menu, so you can choose what shape or finish you want your eraser to be in, which is great depending on whether or not you're doing really streamlined line art or if you're maybe doing like textured work where you're trying to mimic a pencil on paper finish. Then we have our layers menu. When we tap on this, it shows us all of the layers that we currently have created in our canvas. We can move our layers up and down, so we can control which layer is on top of the other. We can rename our layers here. We can change some settings on our layers, like which kind of blend mode we want it to have. You can delete layers, you can clear layers, you can duplicate layers. your layers, anything to do with your layers is here. Don't overlook your layer tool. Again, it's a rookie mistake, but it happens so easily that when you start using Procreate that you just illustrate everything onto one layer and then you can't move specific things around or just erase specific things. Don't be afraid to use layers. I try to have every different element of my canvas on a different layer because that means if I'm not happy with something, I can just delete that layer. I don't have to try and erase little details in a canvas that already has a background and other things behind it, if that makes sense. And then the last little thing that we have here on the top toolbar is the little circle where we choose our colors. There are lots of different ways that you can select your colors on Procreate, which is another thing that I love. You can use the classic color selector, you can use a color wheel, or you can use a color value. So you can actually enter in hex codes. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail on the color tool because there's a lot going on in there. I recommend that you have a play with it, and I will be uploading a video where I show you some of the really cool features in the color palette another time. So the very last thing that we have in Procreate is our little slider bar. This might be on the left or the right hand side of your screen depending on how you've set up your preferences. The slider menu allows you to control the size of your brush, obviously up and down, smaller or bigger. It also allows you to control the opacity of your brush, so how transparent or not it is. And then the little square in the middle of that slider, again, you can control what that does from your preference menu. So again, as I already said, make sure you go through that preferences settings menu and set up your whole canvas the way that you want it to be. And then obviously down the bottom, we have the undo and the redo tools. So there's a lot there to explore. I think that starting on Procreate is a little bit like learning any new skill. You do have to take that time to play with it and not like skip over that, because you're just gonna end up getting frustrated because you can't find where everything is. That's all from me for today. I hope that you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, make sure you click that thumbs up button to give this video a like. And I will see you again next week where I will be back with another tutorial.